Hey guys, Brad Pryor here with Group Brandon, hanging out with Garrison Panzer. Man, I got it. You told me before we started. I'm like, I'll probably screw that up. Because then we start talking about different last names that you have a hard time when you're announcing and stuff. Can you tell everybody exactly what you do? And
rodeo announcer or Western events announcer, music director, production manager for various events, and then in my spare time, what little bit I have, I try to moonlight into any other role that I can. Video directing, not afraid to go drive a tractor, pack panels, run stats for an event. Just about anything that keeps me involved and immersed in the Western world.
Gotcha. Where are you from?
Originally from Lakin, Kansas. It's back in the southwest part of the state of Kansas. It's around Garden City, Dodge City. Grew up there my whole life. Lived there through high school, and then I say, because don't really have a good reason for it, but I say I claim Stillwater, Oklahoma more than anything, because that's where I went to college and lived there for about 7 years, and then just about 2.5 years ago moved to Texas.
Okay. What brought you to Texas?
Probably the biggest reason was just didn't really have anything to keep me in Stillwater. I lived there, went to school from 2016 to 2019 at Oklahoma State, and didn't really have any good reason to stick around there. The logical reason behind it is a lot of the rodeos that I was starting to do and a lot of the events required me to fly a lot, and so I was either having to drive an hour to Oklahoma City, which then you catch a connecting flight to DFW anyways, and then to wherever, or Tulsa or Wichita or whatever else. And so it just made sense to come down. Garrett Yerrigan moved down here to Texas, and was good friends with him, still am, and decided to come down and be closer to where some of our friends were, and a lot of the Western world seems to revolve around. And so we came down here, and it's been pretty good ever since. So we stay busy, and DFW is pretty convenient to catch a straight flight to most of the places we go. So
right. So what is your favorite part of your career? What do you like? What are you most passionate about?
Are we talking like which job do I like the most? Or,
right.
Okay,
Since you have multiple jobs.
Yeah. So the way I tell everybody is, the music directing side of it, for whatever reason, and this is going to sound extraordinarily arrogant, and I don't mean it to, but for whatever reason, the music directing side of it comes easy. Like I don't seem to have to struggle with it as much as I probably do the other two jobs that I do the most. The music side, I think a guy just gets to go have fun. You set the mood, you play clips and sound effects and whatever else that make the crowd laugh and get you pumped up, and you really are in control of the vibe. So that one probably could have the most fun with. But as far as wanting a challenge and trying to work towards and be better at, it's probably the announcing side. There's something that just gets my motor running, and probably does the other guys that are in the industry, to be the one that has to find something to say, be the guy that tells the story of the contestants. At the end of the day, it's about the contestants that you go to and watch. And so how can you entice new fans that are there, or old longtime fans, but how can you put your own personal touch on making it exciting? The same song and dance and same story that they hear week in and week out on the Cowboy Channel and social media and rodeos that they go to. But how can you tell it different that makes it interesting? And so I like the challenge of announcing more, and something that really kind of started it all, because when I first started out announcing back in, I want to say 2015, when I first started, I had to do my own music while I announced, and now I'm privileged and fortunate enough to go to a lot of rodeos where I have a music director with me, and if I'm announcing, I don't have to do my own music, but doing both at the same time. But that's kind of what started it all. So announcing be kind of the biggest passion. But then you take the production managing side and you tie in together from an announcer's perspective, from a music director's perspective, from a video board operator's perspective. How does it all tie together, and how do you make it cohesive? How do you bring to life vision of somebody's, thoughts and ideas and what they want to see happen at the end of the day. And then you really put together, the entire experience, from start to finish, from the world's toughest tour that I'm fortunate enough to be a part of the team that works on, and the Governor's Cup, and before the Cinch Timed Event Championship, the IFR, Junior NFR, just to name a few of them. When you first step foot in the building, a production manager's job in my mind is to enhance the experience. What are you seeing in the arena when it happens, whether it's a display vehicle or the moving lights and the video screen, what's it doing, the ribbons, what's the music, what commercials do you play, how do you tie in together a commercial loop to a sponsor read and sell, and then making it make sense from the very start of Hello and Welcome to, all right, it's time to buck them and buck them hard, to steal Bob Tallman's line. What happens in between there, and then how do you get from that point to the end point and everything in between? So, what I say is being a good music director makes me a better announcer. Being a good announcer makes me a better music director, and having done both of those jobs, it helps a lot with the production.
Yeah, I can see that. How do you come up with, do you look at the different professional athletes when they're competing? Do you kind of put your music together that fits them?
Yeah.
So I think that's a common question. Is this the song that they picked, or is this the song that you picked?
Yeah. Sometimes, really kind of, I think probably where that trend started was Benji Bendley at the NFR. He would ask guys what songs they wanted played for them when they were competing, and what they wanted to see played. And so there's some guys that are notorious for certain songs, and are probably most associated with certain songs, and also in the specialty act world and clowns and everything else. But sometimes guys will try and steal that trend. Benji, Hambone, then Brad this year, Narducci at the NFR will probably do some of that same. But most of the time, really, a lot of it is just whatever I'm feeling in the moment. The way I look at it is, if I'm having fun, if I enjoy it, if I think that the beat's there, if the energy's driving and going along, then surely everybody else is too. And a lot of it revolves around, you need to watch the crowd. You can't be secluded. You can't be in your own world. You've got to be able to watch and see. If you look into the audience and nobody's tapping their foot, or nobody's bobbing their head, or, nobody gets real excited whenever you play a certain song, then probably not a good fit. So throw that one away and try something different.
Is there any professional athletes that have their most eclectic songs, or are they just all kind of?
Shane Hanchy is all the way up. Kai Hamilton's song is Cocaine Country Dancing. And so, okay, all right. So I'm going to tell a trade secret and tell on myself a little bit. I get made fun of it a lot. So I'm not, even though I love music directing, I am not a big lyrics guy. So, you could play some songs, the old classics and the songs that everybody knows. And of course the, most traditional sing-along songs and everything else. I can belt out a few lines of the chorus and I could tell you what it is. But truth be told, I'm terrible about knowing what the actual lyrics are to a song. I'm terrible about knowing what the name of a song is, knowing who sang it or who wrote it or what the artist is. But I could tell you, right now, without a doubt in my mind, that if you said, hey, there's a song that's kind of like this, and here's the words to it, and I think the name is this. And if I know that I have it, I could tell you it's in letter F, 4 rows down, middle of the page on my computer. I know where every song is on my computer and basically every tune that I have. But I'm terrible about knowing what the lyrics are and everything. And I say all that to say I could, go through and if you said, well, hey, isn't this guy's song this? I'm like, oh yeah, of course it is. I knew that was his song, but I am I'm a little bit of a spaz when it comes to knowing what the actual words are, but yeah, I mean, trying to figure out whose song is what, playing it for them, and seeing them at certain places. Then too, I think it's fun. Like, Benji, like I said, has done a lot of stuff with the NFR and branding certain guys with songs. Hambone, Josh Hilton has done that a little bit. I'm sure Brad will this year too, but being able to put your own flair and touch to it or whatever. One of the songs that I think is good and like in the breakaway roping world, there's a song called "Here Comes the Queen," and so typically if I'm at an event or do whatever, that's the song that I would play for Jackie Crawford. That is the person that you associate it with. She's the queen of breakaway or whoever it is. You think about back in the days of Lisa Lockhart and Louie. And so Louie being the song for her, and Haley Kinzel and Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress, and just songs that fit the vibe and mood for certain people. And if they request it, that's great. But then you also think about what songs just pump you up. And so for a guy that's pumping up the crowd, what song can you play for him?
So between town events and rough stock, is there a difference in music, or pretty much it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, I'd probably say there's a little bit. For whatever reason, and it depends on how many events or how many you have in the event, but timed events are going to take a little bit longer per run. So you don't necessarily need to just mash the gas the entire time for them. But for rough stock guys, it's that adrenaline of, we just bucked one, he got set to the ground, here's his score, here comes the next guy, and he just nods his head. So it moves sometimes at a little bit faster pace. Those songs kind of, work themselves out into it. But I kind of got into a bad habit early on of my music directing career and I think I'm guilty of it too a little bit in my announcing, on saying some of the same stuff in events and the old cliche phrases and words and just filler stuff that you use. But same way kind of went for music. I got into a bad habit of only playing these songs for this event, or only playing these songs at this moment, or utilizing only the same songs per rodeo performance. So I've tried to, as the years have gone on, go and revamp it a little bit and put it in more of a generic folder of these songs will fit for any time, any moment, any ride, can use them as I want. Then I've got another level that's good, but wouldn't be my go-tos. Then I've got stuff that, hey, it's good to have these songs on standby because you never know how much music you're going to end up needing. But I don't know. It's probably more what I would call laid-back music. Still some pump-up stuff, but laid-back, good listening music for a timed event, just because it does take a little bit longer. Like, I'll use a song for a minute and a half of a timed event run before they ever nod their head, whereas you may only use 45 seconds of a rough stock song because they're so quick sometimes.
Yeah. How do you lay into the performance horse side of it? Does it kind of follow the same mindset, or?
The performance horses and doing events like, went and did the Super Slide in Tulsa, I'm going to do the Snaffle Bit Futurity, did the World's Greatest Horseman this year, some of those events. I'm completely just out of my realm at those events for the most part, because I don't come from that world. So I don't know what's proper. I don't know what's right. Excuse me. I just see what I think makes sense and try it. I got somebody's approval or stamp of approval, if you will, from the World's Greatest Horseman this year, and I didn't even think anything of it. Some guy had said that Garrison was the only music director that I've ever seen change a song in the middle of a run at the World's Greatest Horseman. And when he said it, it never even crossed my mind. It was like, oh, are we not supposed to do that? Is that against the rules? Is that a no-no? I don't have any idea, but to me, kind of same goes for announcing as music directing as production too. The same thing for so long just feels like an eternity for me. And it may only be 2 to 3 minutes, but if it's the same thing that you're listening to or silence or whatever else, it drives me up a wall because it doesn't feel like something's happening.
Right.
So, like in the production world, you utilize a lot of things like lights and video and sound and announcer cues, but like when something happens, hopefully it cues the people that something changed, that there's something fixing to happen different. In the music world, instead of listening to the same song over and over again, the change in the song means that something's fixing to change in a run. I've had the fortunate opportunity to go music direct some and announce some equestrian meets at Oklahoma State over the last 6 or 7 years. And one of my favorite things to do is their reining patterns. And I'll play a song when they do their circles, one big, one small, change the lead, big, small. But whenever they go into their run for the drop, I try to find a song that drops with it, just because I think it's cool to hear that beat hit when their butt sliding in the dirt, and something different that I don't think's been done very much in that world, and starting to see a trend a little bit more of some of those events hiring a true music director, whereas in the past it's been their announcer just playing music. So having come from that side where it's hard to announce and music direct and get all the information correct, there's only so much you can do, but being a dedicated music director, you have a little more liberty to play with it.
Right. I can see that. Who's your hero? Or who do you idolize towards before you was actually doing this? That made you want to do it?
Made me want to do it.
Or do it better. How about that?
Yeah. The guys that I idolized when I started my career, of course, is Bob Tallman and Boyd Pulhamus, and music directors like Benji and Hambone, and I think that really though where it all started for me was announcers that I saw at rodeos when I was growing up. I never wanted to be an announcer. Truth be told, I grew up with my dad and granddad as rodeo judges. We went to rodeos every weekend, and whether it was a high school rodeo, a Little Britches rodeo, an amateur rodeo, they were the judges there, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. But going to so many rodeos, listening to guys and announcers growing up, I guess because I don't have a problem talking and never met a stranger, I retained some of it, or always kind of found my way up to the announcer stand and would announce the mutton busting, or do a raffle ticket, or help with the clown act, or whatever else. I guess if you ask my family, they'd probably say that I always somehow managed to find my way into a spotlight, because I didn't like sitting in the shadows. But those guys that I heard so much growing up was really kind of where I started my foundation on announcing, and what they did, music they played, what they said, and how they announced. Then as time's gone on, hearing stories of it, not really being immersed in the pro rodeo world, but getting to hear stories about other guys and announcers and individuals in it. And, then of course, how can you forget the legends of Phil Gardenhire and Hadley Barrett, and, guys that just I never had a chance really to work with or meet or see, but have heard so many stories of and listened to old videos of. But then I hate to say it and give them credit, because it pains me more than anybody to admit it out loud. But one of the guys that is truly an inspiration and makes me want to be better, because I see how well he does it, is Garrett Jurgen. I mean, he is. I'll brag on him and think of him as a brother, and other guys in the industry too. I'm not discounting anybody, but he's the one that I'll come to the most with. What did you think of this? What do I need to do better on here? If anybody listens and takes away the advice he gave to me, and the advice I'd give to anybody else too, is that you've got to go back and listen to yourself. because listening to what you say and what you do, and it doesn't matter if it's music or announcing or watching back performances if you want to be a production manager, watching back what you did, what you thought at the time was good may not be as good as you thought, or may have been better than what you thought it was if you thought it was bad. But that's the only way you get better is going back and studying, disseminating what you put together, and then being able to pick apart and take what you like and run with it, or take what you didn't like and throw it away.
Yeah. What do you, during the slack performance, is there any production level of anything or announcing? I'm just thinking as a pro athlete, you feed off the music, you feed off production, and the slack, I'm guilty of, number one, not being in the slack. And number two is like, I've never watched the slack. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just think it's a question though, because like, if you are that person that feeds off that.
Yep.
What's that look like?
I don't know. I'm torn on it, because half of me or part of me thinks that if you do feed off of it, then why wouldn't you do everything in your power to make sure you're in a performance?
Right.
And a lot of times, and I know there's only so many, you can't be in two places at once. There's only so many rodeos you can hit in a weekend. So guys have to draw up where they draw up and take what they can get. And, it's just part of it. For slack, really the only slack that we truly mix and make a performance style that I'm a part of is Carthage, Texas.
Really?
Panola County Cattlemen's Association Rodeo. I started doing it 4 or 5 years ago, and Terry, I'm going to be bad about this. Terry there at the rodeo, he said that, we make slack fun. He announces it and talks about the contestants, talks about sponsors, tells stories about himself and Terry Holland. Sorry, but he'll do it, and so I'll show up in the morning and mix it like a performance. And every ride, every run, everything we do, we make it fun, and it's usually just the contestants and their family that are there watching. Every other one, I try and at least make sure there's music on, just so it's not silent. I have announced a few slacks this year. Normally being how do I want to say this? A diva rodeo announcer, I guess. I like to sleep in, and I don't like to get up if I don't have to. But if there's rodeos that do want us to announce it, I'll go do it. It definitely is completely different, and you got to almost retrain your brain to get out of the slack mode if you go do one to, hey, now you've got to entertain. It might be the same contestants, it might be similar competition. You may not see anybody take over the lead or whatever, but it doesn't change the fact that people came to be entertained, so now you have to entertain them somehow.
Well, for people that are new to our industry, can you define what the difference is between slack and production, or the slack and the main performance?
Yeah. So slack, what my go-to line is, and I think a lot of guys, is it's all the extra rodeo we can't fit into a performance. So it's all the extra runs and rides, but the rodeo itself takes so many entries, and typically you limit it to 10 to 12 an event in the performance, just to keep it manageable. And so everything extra, let's say you're a 2-performance rodeo and you get 80 entries in the steer wrestling, but you only take 10 a performance. So, by the simple math, that leaves 60 runs that you have to do outside. So 60 runs, either 30 Friday morning and 30 Saturday morning after the performance, whenever they designate slack to be. But that's when it all takes place. But the difference would be that it's not a ticketed event. It's not an entertainment piece. It's not something that we're trying to knock out in a set amount of time. So slack can go anywhere from 2 hours to 7 hours, depending on how many runs you have. But when you're in a performance, people come to be entertained. One of the hardest things in rodeo's world, and it's funny because we've gone to a couple other sporting events this year. hockey games, football games, basketball, just different events to try and see how do they engage fans? How do they keep entertainment? How do they keep things rolling? And, the conclusion we've come to is we almost work too hard in rodeo. And I don't know what the reason behind that is. I don't know why it is we feel like we have to do more when you go to a hockey game and they'll play music. Let's call it pre-show. That's what we call it in rodeo, and I think they would too. And pre-show, from the time doors open till the time they drop the puck for hockey and all this stuff that happens in between, there are some production elements, but it's still kind of the same vibe, and it's similar. There's music playing, there's sponsor loops, commercials, pre-show announcements that happen. And then that's where you start to deviate a little bit, is once the puck drops and what happens. But, like in a hockey game, they do 20-minute periods. But the only time you hear the announcer or hear music is when the refs blow the whistle and stop play. So you'll hear music there. They drop the puck. It's silent. It's just the fans cheering. Rodeo is the only sport that I know of that the announcer is more similar to a TV broadcaster, that the music director or MD or DJ or whatever you want to call them at other events only plays when competition's not happening. And, excuse me, rodeo is the only sport where the announcer is talking the whole time and the MD, music director, is playing the whole time. Every other sport, you only hear them come on to announce a goal, to announce a penalty, to announce, the end of a period, and music plays when competition's not happening. So, we're very unique in that sense. So, whereas a music director for football and basketball and hockey may only play 100 songs total throughout the night, through the first event of rodeo, a music director may play 35 songs. An announcer is going to talk about every player, every horse, every score, every, moment of a ride. So it's pretty tricky, but that's where the difference is, where we enhance things so much from a performance to slack is, everything that happens is not scripted, but it is structured. Mm-hmm. It is, done with a purpose. And so in order to give the fans the best experience.
Is it fair to say that between sports and in the rodeo, is there a big difference? I mean, it's not something you cross over into, and neither would they. You kind of stay to your rodeo stuff. They kind of stay to the sports stuff. Or is there people that cross over?
There are some I know have. Myself, Garrett. I think a few other of our friends have been asked to do other events. Have applied to do some other things. I had a year of getting to do Oklahoma State softball, did a couple baseball games, and a couple soccer matches for the university, and wildly different, pace than what I'm used to. And almost, I'd suffice to say it was boring compared to what rodeo is, because it is truly, now your starting lineup at number 2 and 2, you go on, then you're done.
Right.
All right, that's the end of this period. We want to say thanks to the sponsor for bringing it to us. Here's the score at half, and we'll be back. And that's basically all you say, whereas rodeo, you're working the entire time. So the other side to it, too, is it becomes trickier to be involved in another industry, because rodeo's so the other industries are so volatile with their schedule, as far as their dates don't get set until a couple months before the season, because of TV broadcast and other team schedules and what you have to work around. Whereas rodeo, I know that I can go to Carthage, Texas, the second weekend of May. I know the National Junior High Finals is typically the last week of June. I know that the Cinch Playoffs Governor's Cup is going to be the last week of September. It's always going to be those dates. So I know that that's when that's going to happen. Industry Hills, California is the second week of October. But then you can plan on that year, 2 years, 5 years in advance. The other sports, you're at the mercy of when they set their home schedules and what can work. So ultimately, that's kind of what led to me not doing as much with the University at Oklahoma State because, they wouldn't set their schedule. And whenever they finally did, I'd already booked rodeos because you have to pay the bills and keep going. But, I think that there would be some ease to be able to transition over into another event, another sport. And I think what we do in rodeo could bring a lot to the table for some of those sports if they would let an announcer come in and truly act like an announcer instead of just a public address speaker.
Well, being as we're talking about sports versus Western industry, and this is going to probably be a very touchy subject.
Okay.
Have you ever seen anybody in the rodeo industry get off a horse and kneel to American flag?
No. And, it's crazy to think that that's what somebody would choose to protest on. The other thing that I'm going to kind of,
you're a sports guy.
I am, yeah, and so, I love a lot of them, and I love watching just about anything and going to venues and seeing and seeing the way they do things different. But I feel like the one thing that rodeo does better than any other sport, and obviously I'm biased, but one thing I think we do better than any other sport is we do a true Americana presentation. We call it Americana, or the presentation of the American flag. It's special to see it brought in on horseback. It's great when you can see it brought in with a color guard. But think about any other sporting event that you may go to. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the singing of our national anthem. Thank you for being here with us. Our singer so-and-so, and they cut out and the anthem singer goes. But when you go to a rodeo performance, the announcer, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, the announcer everywhere, I think, always does their best to instill a sense of patriotism in the fans. You talk about the colors, you talk about the symbolism, you talk about the history, and you talk about what it means to be an American, and ultimately ask the question of, are you proud to be an American? And look for that response from the crowd. I think that, that's one thing that we do better than any other sport of taking a moment to, and one of the lines that I use is, we don't stick her in a corner, we don't hang her up on a wall, we bring her front and center because we're proud of her. That's one thing that I love about our industry. The other one being, of course, the ultimate difference between our industry and other sports is we pray before a performance. We pray before any rodeo performance or across the country and in the world. And there's times that I've been a part of events where we were directed not to, just by the fear of causing friction or upsetting certain demographics and fans. And it pains me a lot not to pray before a performance, because I think that's the greatest privilege that I have as an announcer. But then there's other times where I've been to places like most recently, LA County, Industry Hills, California, and with protesters barking outside of the arena within earshot of hearing their megaphones and chants and everything else. But in the heart of country where people see rodeo trying to be devalued and thrown to the wayside, we still prayed before our performance. And matter of fact, when I first went out there, I asked their committee, is that something that we get to do here? I don't know. California has a stigma about them that is anti this, anti that. And then when you really get down to the root of it, California is very, founded on the principles of rodeo and the Western lifestyle and agriculture and the industry, and people want that and crave that. It just happens to be a minority of voices that overpower the majority at times that you hear more about. But we prayed before, and the committee guy said, nope, here's where they need to hear it more than anywhere. And so we prayed. And so I love that about it. But, never at a rodeo are you going to see somebody kneel for the anthem. Well, the old saying is, we kneel for the prayer and we stand for the anthem. Because, you recognize the fact that, There's people that would still stand to this day if they could for that flag because of what it means and what it symbolizes. They may not be able to because they sacrifice so much to keep us free and to protect this nation and wear that flag proud.
Yeah. I come from a big military family, so that's one thing that sticks with me very, very hard is to watch somebody pull that off when they're welcoming our country to play a professional sport or devalue our beliefs. And I'm not saying, I mean, we are a country of the free and we're open to we're not biased to anybody, you know, and to see somebody do that, you know, that's hard to do coming from where I come from.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that's one thing that's proudful of being a part of the West industry. I feel like we do a great job of patriotism with our crowds and everything I have has American flag on in our trucks. There may be a small little sticker, but I still, and it fly.
Yeah.
Me and my old marketing girl, she's my executive assistant now, but we even have the flags because they're on the front fenders of the truck and there's a certain way the flag's got to fly.
Correct.
And it drove me crazy because it looks backwards on the right side. You know,
but it's because this flag never runs.
Right.
So
yeah. So just the little things I get that you don't know until you talk about.
Yep.
Just like kneel to pray and rise to honor the flag. That's something I hadn't heard in a long time. You know, and I think it's just one thing about doing this podcast is getting stuff out there where people have new material to think about, positive material for our country to do what it needs to do. Do you have anything in your industry when you're doing production and stuff? What is the hardest thing to accomplish? Is it rodeo committees or is it?
My brain went a different direction, which we can go that route too. But so just based on what you had asked and said, instantly where my brain went, the hardest thing in rodeo production is being fresh and not feeling like you're doing the same thing over again. You know, the one thing that I hate and I'm guilty of at times, and I think we all are, but and truthfully, it's the one thing that trips me up more than anything when I'm announcing or music directing is not feeling like I've done the same thing over and over and over again. I don't want to say the same thing. I don't want to play the same song in the same place. I don't want to play the same video for an opening, here, or, how can you do something that's different? Now, the hardest part about that is there's only so many things you can do different before you're just throwing things at the wall and hoping that something sticks and seeing it. And at that point, then you're straying from what the ultimate goal is to entertain people and let them have fun and make them want more. Because I think, at the end of the day, whether you're an announcer, a music director, a clown, a production manager, stock contractor, whatever it is, a rodeo committee, the goal should be to make the fans want more when they leave, rather than, boy, when will this ever end? Instead of it being I can't wait for this to get over, it's, man, I can't wait to come back next year. I hope, let's buy tickets for tomorrow night and see how it goes. But you got to make it fresh and new and exciting. So, fortunately, like I said, with the world's toughest rodeo, a small cog and a big machine that makes that whole thing drive and happen. The team that we have together, whether it comes from the promotional material we use to advertise when our tickets go on sale, and when we come to a venue, to the merch that we sell at the venue, to the signage in the arena, to the way we present the Cowboys and the events and sponsors and activations. Everybody comes together and pulls together the ideas, and we get to put it all into effect and motion. And so thankfully, that none of that falls all entirely on me, because boy, you talk about a giant overload of thinking that a guy would have to do. So we get to lean on each other a lot, and all of us do it. The Governor's Cup's no different. The IFR, any events that I get to be a part of. Now, kind of along the directions that you were going, one of the hardest things to handle and navigate when I'm working a rodeo as a music director and an announcer would be probably the difference in committees from every week. And so one of the things, and I've used it in another example for another facet of my life this year, but one of the things that I can associate it to is that week that you go to a rodeo, when you go to Industry Hills, California, when you go to Gordon, Nebraska, when you go to Douglas, Wyoming, or Topeka, Kansas, that week, that weekend, whether it's a 6-day rodeo, a 2-day rodeo, or a 1-day show, it is that committee's 1 week to bring all the efforts, all the work, all the ideas to life, to fruition, to accomplish and achieve. And they put, blood, sweat, and tons of hours of hard work into it. And so you can't take away from what they've done and what they have put together. But when it's over, they're done until the next year. I pack up and I go to the next town that is that week's or that rodeo's week to do it all. Then you pack up and you go to the next town and it's that rodeo's week to do it all. So the tricky part for me to navigate is not taking what one rodeo wants to do, has done, or is going to do, and not throwing it away and discarding it and thinking, oh, well, it's not going to work because it didn't work here. Well, it may work here. This is a completely different town. It's a completely different rodeo, a completely different crowd. It may work here. And at the end of the day, you're the one that hired me. You're the one that wants me to do this. So, okay, we will do this. When I get to be a production manager for events, I do get to have a little bit more say in how some things go. Ultimately, end all be all, there's a boss above me and sometimes several bosses above me that have the final say. But I get to have a little bit more control in it. So my preferences and my style of doing something gets to shine a little bit more. But when I go music, direct, and announce, one of the lessons that Garrett has had to teach me and several of our other friends, mutual friends of yours and I's even, but has had to remind me that, hey, when you're at this town, you're just the announcer. Hey, when you're at this town, you're just the music director. When you're at this town, you're just the video board operator. It's not your job to tell them, nope, that's not going to work. It's not your job to say, hey, why don't you think about doing it this way? And then even more so, the biggest takeaway is it's not your job to turn back around and say, well, I could have told you it wasn't going to work, but you didn't ask me. Right. I think a lot of guys get a bad rap for being a control freak, and I'm guilty of it at times, but being a control freak and overexerting themselves and inserting them themselves into situations that they don't need to. At the end of the day, you're hired by them to be there. Do what they ask you to do. If there's a way to simply suggest or bring together a collective better understanding of, how do you want this to work? And that's a great question for anybody to steal and ask. Ask them, okay, how do you envision this working? How do you want this? What's the end goal? Right. What do you want this to end up being? And how can we get there to that end goal? Because when you ask a question like that, instead of saying, no, listen, it's not going to work the way you think because it does this, this, and this, but let me tell you how it ought to be done. Well, now all you're doing is being the know-it-all boss and prick that comes in and takes over things. Instead, turn it around and make it their idea, which is ultimately, hopefully, your idea too. And then you're all, reading from the same page in the same book, and then it all happens cohesively.
Yeah. So who picks, if you're doing production for a rodeo committee, are you picking who's in the slack, picking who's in the perf, or is that done by the PRCA, PBR, or the association more or less? And do you pick the special talent, like the rodeo clown?
Yep.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it's all, rodeo's favorite phrase and terminology is luck of the draw. And it doesn't just apply to the stock that you get. It applies to where you happen to come up in a performance. Standalone rough stock events, Extreme Bulls, Extreme Broncs, World's Toughest, that includes all of them, Bears, Broncs, and Bulls. Those are only allowed you only take so many entries because you're not going to have slack in those types of events typically. So you only take so many entries. So you enter the event, you hope you have enough preference on where you can go to it and get in that list. But then, like the other rodeo performances, it's luck of the draw of you drew up in slack or you drew up in a performance. Once those trades lists comes out, and I'm speaking purely towards PRCA, not entirely familiar with how PBR does. Theirs is more, I believe, a tour of certain guys are on the tour, certain guys get to go to certain events. So you're not going to see all of them, at every tour stop, and they're not going to have slacks. But once you see who's in the event, the way your stock contractor will typically do it, some producers will manage it, is you can set a buck order then of we're going to end the saddle bronc riding with Damian Brennan. We're going to end the bull riding with Josh Frost. We're going to end the bareback riding with Dean Thompson. That's right, I said Dean Thompson. But anyways, you're going to have guys that you can set the buck order on. Timed event guys, timed event, you've got to run kind of how you get drawn up. You can do splits and you can do different ways to try and shuffle it a little bit on how that's supposed to go. But normally, timed event, you're going to go ahead and run them in the order that PRCA sets. But you're still going to try and feature the best talent you can. And, sometimes if you know that you're going to be in a rodeo where the best guy out in the timed event, let's say Riley Webb in the tie-down roping, Riley's going to be the third cowboy out in the tie-down roping. Boy, you wish you could end with him last, but, it's not the way it's going to go. But you still talk about him in your opening ceremonies. Hey, here's a 100 guys that are out tonight's performance, but we want to tell you about 3 individuals. And you do a rough stock, a timed event, and a timed event guy. Your heavy hitters in the performance. You feature the athletes. So you can do different ways to make sure that you truly do impress upon the fans the significance of who's there. Now, as far as the comedies or the specialty act and the entertainers and everything else, that is purely up to the rodeo committee or producers' control. You hire who's going to do you the best job to fill gaps, bring entertainment to the rodeo, stuff that nobody's ever seen. And then also too, if you got to be mindful of how much money you have to spend, you get what you can get and kind of make the most of it. And the same can be said for your announcer, your music director, what kind of sponsor activations you do. A lot of it comes down to money, but also availability, and also who's going to do, like I said, the best job to enhance or complement whoever else is working the rodeo and what you're trying to achieve.
On the production level, the music versus announcing, all that, is the prep time about the same? Like, say it's a 6-day rodeo versus a 2-day rodeo.
Yep.
Prep time about the same?
Probably depends on how that 6-day rodeo is structured. Let's take, because I guess since this is one thing I could probably get away with on talking about, and I'm very excited about going to do it, but let's take the rodeo that I'm looking forward to doing at the start of 2026 in the First Frontier Circuit Finals. It's a 4-performance rodeo. It's over 3 days, but 4 performances. However, it's the same contestants in every event and every performance. A circuit finals, anything of that nature. A lot of it's going to be, you're not going to do different homework. The only difference is you're going to say, hey, in the first performance, this was the time they were. In the third performance, this was the score they were. So that'd be the only difference in homework you do. Whereas a 3 or 4 day rodeo that is completely different contestants, and it's a straight one-header, no short round, no shootout, no nothing else. There's a lot more prep work that goes into it because you're doing a new set of contestants every day for those performances. But then again, if you get a rodeo that's a 6-day rodeo and you've got 2 rounds, you're going to see 3, let's say 2 performances of the same contestants, 2 performances of a different set of contestants, a performance that's going to bring together the wild card round, so a mixture of both rounds of contestants, and then the short round. You know, you're going to get away a little bit more of only having to do essentially 4 days of homework instead of 6, because you can just take that homework you did and apply it to the next 2 days. You know, there's a lot of prep work that goes into it. You know, the bigger the rodeo, the more money that's added, the more significant it is of a finals-esque feeling. You're going to get heavier, bigger hitters and players, so there's going to be a lot more homework to go do. If you get a smaller circuit rodeo, kind of just depends on who's passing through and who can make it to it. You know, I've been fortunate enough that a lot of the rodeos I do that are on some of the smaller circuit level rodeos, they still get big time contestants to come compete at their rodeo, so there's still some homework to do. And that's just strictly from the announcer side. The music directing side, there's really not much homework to do. There's not much prep work. But a lot of music directors' work is done way in advance of the rodeo. You know, like yesterday, and even this morning a little bit. Yesterday I spent maybe an hour and a half culling through songs that I'd heard on Spotify that I wanted to see if would fit the vibe, and download and cut parts together and make into new clips or new buck out songs or new pre-ride songs, just different terminology for guys. But then this morning I did the same, and always trying to think of, you know, could this song work in a different way that I've been using it in a different spot? You know, is this a song that's good enough to trim down from 3.5 minutes to a minute to be a pyro and laser song, or am I shooting for the moon and trying too hard? You know, so the music director's prep work is probably done more sporadic throughout the year. Different music vibes, songs they hear, trends on TikTok and, you know, Netflix shows and movies and stuff that you hear. Whereas an announcer's role is the homework the week of, finding out who your contestants are, finding out where they've been, what they've done, fun facts about them, you know, personal touches and flares on it, you know, and being able to tell that story then.
Did you go to school to learn all this?
No, and truth be told, I went to school at Oklahoma State and didn't learn anything either for the degree I have. So I have that degree hanging on the wall in the office, but you know, if you ask any of my professors, I don't know that I retained much of it. But there are schools out there, and there's guys that are doing events. You know, the late Chad Nicholson had a school that he put on. You know,
Bob have one?
I think Bob was part of one. I don't know if he did himself. I think he's been part of several. Scott Grover and Jesse Knudsen are doing one now. Justin McKee does one. There's different guys that have put, you know, clinics on and schools, and I never did end up going to one. I never did, you know, pull the trigger on going to any of those early on in my career. And I bet there'd be something to be said about, you know, going to listen to different perspectives and different takes and hearing different guys' styles. And again, it kind of goes back to what we talked earlier on. You know, the guys that I listened to growing up, the announcers at all the KPRA rodeos and high school rodeos and everything else that I went to growing up, I molded my career a little bit after them. Liked what one guy did, didn't like what another guy did, and kind of blended it all together. And you know, one of the things that I think anybody needs to be mindful of, and to tie back to another part that we talked about with going back and listening to yourself, is you know, don't try and be somebody. You know, don't try and be Roger Mooney, because there's already a Roger Mooney. Right. Don't try and be an Anthony Lucia, because there's already an Anthony Lucia. Don't be a Garrett. Don't be a Boyd. Don't be Wayne Brooks. Don't be, you know, a Mike Mathis, a Doug Mathis, you know, whoever, Will Rasmussen. Don't be them. There's already one of them. You got to be yourself. And so one of the hardest things to do, though, is to not find yourself falling into the rhythm, because obviously what they do is so good. That's why they get hired. So, the highest form of flattery is imitation. And so you try to imitate them, because if they're so good at what they do and they get hired, it must work, and it could get you hired for other things. But ultimately, all you're going to do is end up sounding like the Dollar General version of that announcer, when they're already the, luxury brand. So you've got to find your own voice and find your own style of music, and try and create your own flair with production, be your own clown and entertainer and specialty act. One of the best things that ever happened to me when I first started out was I thought I was great. I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I had it all figured out. And mind you, this is 3 years into my career probably, and just got the nerve up one day and messaged Boyd Palhamus and said, "Hey, I love for your opinion. Would love for you to listen to some of these videos and tell me, basically I was hunting for, tell me how good I am already, and how I can take the next step." The email I got back from him was, "If you keep doing what you're doing, you'll be the greatest fair rodeo announcer in Southwest Kansas there ever was, and that's it." And you want to talk about deflate your balloon and dump your birthday cake in your lap and just make you feel small. And but it was what I needed to hear. I again, not to brag on him too much, but I go to Garrett for advice because I know he's going to shoot me straight. I have people in my corner that I'm very blessed with that will tell me, "Boy, you butchered that bad. Boy, that wasn't good. What were you thinking playing that song there? And why didn't you play something like this?" People that will not knock you down, but shoot you straight and
make you better,
force you to be better. Exactly. I mean, and I think that's the same with any industry. I mean, I'm sure with you along the way, you had people that told you, "Man, you're doing something wrong," or "Man, you should do this different," or "Man, that probably wasn't the smartest move that you made." And you can take offense to it. You can, be cut down by it. But instead, when you look at successful people, and by no means am I claiming to be, I'm just saying others, when you look at them, what was the one thing that's probably common amongst them all was people that encouraged them to be better than thinking that they were already the greatest.
Right. Do you have a all-time favorite pro athlete?
Ooh, boy.
This is where they get tricky.
Yeah. All-time favorite pro athlete.
And an up-and-coming. That's a two-part question.
Yeah, I'm biased a little bit. I'm going to answer the up-and-coming one while I think about my all-time favorite. I'm biased about the up-and-coming one, a guy that I think has a lot of potential, and purely because of watching him get to play with my younger brother Hadley at Kansas State, but Will Howard as a quarterback for football. You talk about a guy that got passed over for schools, that got passed up on opportunities, left a school to go to Kansas State, became their QB1, and what he did with that program by taking them to Big 12 championship, to bowl game wins, taking the money where it was with the world of NIL, and that's another topic that we don't need to get started on, because I don't know what your time frame is on podcasts, but I could tell you my personal thoughts on NIL and what it's done to college sports. But but taking the money and an opportunity they had, going to play for Ohio State, as kind of more or less knowing that his time at Kansas State was where it was and to an end, and taking it, going to Ohio State, being selected as QB1, taking Ohio State to a national championship, getting drafted and playing for the Steelers. And young in his career, has the potential, but that's a story right there of guys that you want to see success and see somebody overcome adversity and start from low man on the totem to very top of the peak, to getting cut down again, to watching him rise to the challenge. I'm excited to see what he does in the NFL of being a quarterback. And it may not happen He may go a different route, but you got to recognize talent where you see it. I'm a big golfer. In my spare time, I like to. I do enjoy going to play. My friends will say I'm already high strung enough, and my blood pressure peaks at rodeos bad. Like I'm 27 years old, and I've probably got the blood pressure of a 60-year-old man because of how bad it gets during performances. Golf is not exactly the most calming and relaxing sport for me. No. It's extraordinarily frustrating, but I do enjoy it. But I love the story of Tiger Woods, and I think he's probably one of the all-time great athletes. And I really wanted to use that example because you can use anybody, any of the GOATs, if you will, in their respective sport. But I like to use golf because people say golf's not a sport. But Tiger Woods and probably a little bit of being forced upon him when he was younger, starting out practicing so much, but finding his own drive and passion, taking it down the road. And they said that the number one golfer in the world right now has been the straight number one golfer for, I don't remember what they said, 32 weeks or whatever it was. And they said in order for him at his age now, in order for him to surpass Tiger Woods of being the number one golfer in the world most consecutive weeks, he'd have to play until he was 50.
Oh, wow.
And so you look at what Tiger did, when he was playing and just all the accolades and championships and awards and changing the face of the sport in a world that was very probably traditional and very set in their ways and didn't want to see somebody like him succeed, but yet undeniably the greatest golfer of all time, go through it. Those stories like that are exciting to see. And again, like I said, I'm a golf buff a little bit and like to watch it some. And what I set out to do, speaking of this, I'm going to sidetrack because I'm in storytelling mode now. But we had set out, and I didn't get to do it, but I want to next year if we have an event. We were at Laughlin, Nevada for Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo when the Masters was going on. We had a performance going on during the days of the Masters. I really wanted to, and I downloaded the Masters theme song and everything. I wanted to announce a rough stock ride like the commentators at the Masters. I wanted to see if we could do, instead of all right, everybody, time to focus in. Here's this guy, and the bucket horse is this, and get excited, and all that. And as he makes his approach in the bucket chute, the rein of choice today is going to be that of one that he's rode with for a couple of years. And boy, you talk about the horse and just bring it way down just to see if you could and make it fun.
I think people would appreciate that.
No, it'd be interesting. It'd be different, right?
Right.
It'd be different. But
as we wind this up, I'm going to kind of close with a couple things.
Okay.
So we were talking before we got started about pronouncing names and cities that people are from, especially Brazil, Canadians, because I'm familiar with a lot of those different cultures, so to speak, countries. What is the toughest, or what are some of the toughest names you had to say out loud or figure out, or cities?
Yeah. Just to take what we'd kind of talked about. So I remember back to going and doing the North Dakota High School Finals and in Bowman, North Dakota, and getting a list of names up there. And it's not been just then. It's been every rodeo since, really. But one of the weirdest ones that I had was a kid with a last name spelled C-V-A-N-C-A-R-A. C-V-A-N-C-A-R-A. And I could not for the life of me. I mean, there's no way in the world of where do you start? There's too many consonants in a row and not enough vowels, and I have no idea. And so they told me C-V-A-N-C-A-R-A in North Dakota is pronounced Swanchera. And, K-V-A-M-M-E was Kwame. And, just stuff like that. And so you look at names and different ways, and then you get into you start trying to pronounce French names and, what doesn't make sense. And you have to put different inflections on and they run together a little bit. And some of those names up in Canada was kind of the same way in some of those names that you do. And then, too, you also have, in the world where you see somebody over and over again, you see names, you see towns, you do so, and you try and announce it, but your mind doesn't think as fast as your mouth does, I guess. And your mouth says one thing when your brain thinks another, and it's probably the wrong pronunciation, but it's just, when you get to it, I hate more than anything when I go to doing an event and you start reading through, and instead of, being able to read ahead of time or seeing something, and you get to it, and so you're sitting there talking, and you say, all right, next up is Matt. Oof, how do you say that? And so then you've got that long pause, and it's terrible, so you just try and muddle through it, however it is. So normally, if there are moments like that, and I get to names that I know I'm going to butcher, I'll just say the first letter of their last name, and Matt Z, Matt L, or whatever, and then in a performance, if I've already butchered their last name once, then I just go to calling them by their first name.
Well, I can relate to that because I have a problem with Garrison, Jared, all those different. They're so close, and I've seen you a million times.
Yeah,
I've seen Garrett. I've seen all these people, and but at the time when I see you, it's like, shit, is it? Because I know so many people with those names, and it's like it's hard to get out of your mouth the correct way. But I think that's a cool thing. If you had to define your grit with one word, what would it be?
I'm going to say perseverance to define it. To have perseverance, to that being its own word, with perseverance having its own definition, and grit being its own great word to define what it takes to have it, and every other word you can come up with, any other synonyms. But perseverance to me, I think, is going to be the one as far as you can't get discouraged and you can't give up. You've got to be able to persevere through adversity, through trials, through, it's easy to persevere through the highs, but to persevere through the lows, when you don't perform to your level of expectations or other people's level of expectations, when you don't get called back for working a rodeo that you thought you did good at, or maybe knew that you weren't the best at, would have loved a chance to go back and do. You can't let that get you down, because otherwise, what's the point? Why keep going? You've got to persevere through, not getting through an opening as smoothly and cleanly as you wanted, trying something new and it falling flat. If you at least are trying to be fresh, if you're at least trying to do new things, if you're at least trying to stay sharp with everything you're doing, if you're persevering through all of it, I think that's what's going to take people a little bit further. And it's something that, again, I've admitted to being guilty of a lot of things today, but that's something that I'm guilty of too, is not getting discouraged and having a hard time to persevere through those hardships. And now let me back up and say, as an announcer and a music director, I do not have a hard life, okay? We are very pampered. We are very spoiled. I tell everybody I don't work for a living. I don't have a big kid job. I also joke that I get paid to travel. I announce for free. No, there's work into it, but, the hardships that come with it of, trying to persevere through the long summer run road, being gone 82 days consecutively this summer, never once saw the house, never slept in my own bed, had to have my mail brought to me on the road and anything else. And, there's just different things. You're going to find whatever it is that you do, whether it's, for you guys building properties and houses and dream homes and ranches or whatever, if you're an accountant, or if you're a farmer, if you're, a Subway sandwich artist, you have your own level of hardships and trials, but so long as you're willing to persevere and not give up and not quit on what you set out to achieve, I mean, that's going to speak volumes in itself. You know, a lot of times I've been told in my career that being pleasant to be around, having a work ethic, and being willing to try to work with new people and new things takes you further than what talent does. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're none of what we just listed off right there, I think that you're going to find yourself without work faster than those that are willing to persevere through, whatever adversity is in front of them.
If you had to give an 18-year-old advice or yourself, what would that be?
Don't meet Garrett Yerrigan.
Picking on Garrett a lot.
Well, if I'm going to brag on him, I got to pick on him a little bit too. But no, we joked about that when he knew I was going to get a chance to come talk with you, and we were joking about what it is or what my answer could have been to something about advice to your younger self. And the true advice would be quit measuring yourself based upon other people's success. It's a lesson I've had to learn and am still learning today. But you can't determine your own value. You can't put yourself in a position where you think you ought to be based upon somebody else. Because what you have at your disposal, the cards you've been dealt to play, where you've been at is completely different than anybody else in the world. You know, we were talking a little bit about what separates rodeo and the Americana and the prayer and everything else. You know, one of the greatest things that I love about praying and talking about, one thing I say consistently is, we're all bestowed with gifts and talents in our own unique way. And it's never been more true and applies to this. What I have and have been blessed with isn't what somebody else had or has and has been blessed with. The opportunities, the chances to go work events, make a name for yourself, get a foot in the door into the industry isn't the same. So how can you compare yourself to somebody else? Because at the end of the day, you're probably going to feel like a failure. You're going to look at what somebody else has done, the accolades that somebody has, the events they've worked, everything that we may not always admit out loud that that's what we're striving for and achieving for, but it does help along the way to get some of it. One of the hardest things that I had when I started announcing was thinking that because I had done such and such jobs or had done these events or was working along that I should be doing more. That I should be getting this, I should be here, I should have done this by now. And it was all purely, my own self-conceived notions of where a person should be in it. And I wished I would have taken more time back then to step back and reflect on maybe that's where somebody was at that time, but look at where you've come from. Where did you start at and where are you at now? Right. And not putting the cart so far ahead of the horse that you lose sight of where you've been, where you're at, and where you are going to go because you're too focused on the destination to get there, but rather just keep putting in the work that's got you to where you are today and continue to do it consistently.
Well, that's good information. Good. Garrett will get to defend himself, by the way. Okay. So you better get it all out of you now.
Awesome. Can't wait to hear what he has to say.
But I do have a little secret to reveal to you. I actually have been doing a lot of announcing myself.
Have you really?
Yeah. In the shower.
Oh.
I'm going to give this thing a whole different twist at the end here. So, but no, I actually do, to be honest with you.
Hey, you know what? Some people sing in the shower. If Brad announces in the shower, what's wrong with that? I love it.
I think it's hilarious. I entertain myself, yeah. But I do this with my nephew and my kiddos. We have one little Smarty pneumatic chutes. So I do announce the ropings with them.
That's awesome.
And they think it's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
You know, it gets into them like they get mad when I don't show up to announce.
They're open. And how much fun is it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you if you're doing that, and you know what? And that's another good point to talk about that. But you're never too good to do any job. But like something like that, if you get to do that, I mean, like you just said, you make your nephews, your family's experience that much more fun. I mean, surely it's got to be a blast that you look forward to.
Oh yeah,
right?
And mixing it up, just like the things you're talking about that you do for money, I do for free, and I love that. I love getting to watch their interaction of what I'm saying, you know, and how more competitive they are when I give them a rodeo name or I give the steer name or whatever. So I think that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
You and Garrett need to really watch out because I'm up and coming.
You know what? There's some jobs that I'd be willing to give you right now. So you just say when.
I got enough dirty work. But hey, guys, thank y'all for tuning in to Grip Branded, world famous Garrison here. I'm going to try to live up to his mark, but I think Garrett's a better way to aim at.
Yeah.
Better one to aim at. But anyways, thank y'all. Stay tuned for the next episode.